Good evening, students. Very good evening to all of you. Good evening, Roshan sir.
Good evening, sir.
Welcome, sir, to the session on audit insights. And today's session is on substantive testing. This is second session, students. And last session was wonderful session where Roshan sir had explained the basics of substantive testing, explaining starting from risk assessment, then audit evidence basics. Lot many. I think there is some disturbance.
I think tech support has not unmuted.
Tech support, आप अपना
They
mute
have
करो.
to mute it.
Tech support. Yes. Last session was really wonderful session. Sir had explained the basics of substantive testing, starting from risk assessment and then coming to audit evidence, and then explaining few items of, then explaining much about assertions, and then correlating it with the with some items of financial statements. Wonderful session, really. Now, the second session, sir would be explaining, taking forward the topics which were explained in first session, and over to you, Roshan sir. And students, one more thing, before Roshan sir take over, one more thing is that next session would also be on substantive testing, and it would be on 4th of July, Saturday, 4 to 6. Thank you, students, and over to you, Roshan sir.
Thank you so much, Rajiv sir, and a very happy CA day to one and all who is there in this session. So everyone, a very happy CA day. So this is a very, very special day for each one of us. We are able to celebrate our existence as professionals today. So since many of you are students, so for you also we wish you all the best that in the next 1 year, 1.5 years, you will also again, you will have a prefix of CA. So all the best to you all. Now coming to the topic which we started in the last session, it was substantive procedures. So we will continue with that for the next two sessions, today's session and Saturday's session. In both the sessions, we will complete it. Though 6 hours may not be sufficient to cover each and every aspect of substantive testing.
Okay, sir, we will increase the sessions. One more session we will add next time, sir.
Sure, sir, sure. So, yes, but still we will try to cover as many concepts as possible, and hopefully after the end of the third session of substantive procedures, you will have a very good hands-on experience of how to tackle the substantive testing part of audit. Now, before we move to the next day 2 topic, first, in the last session, we had left out the FAQ part. So let me just share the PPT with you once. So we will just run through the FAQs. It will take only 3-4 minutes at most. Then we will continue with the day 2 session. So let me just share my screen. Hope everyone is able to see my screen. Can someone please confirm?
Visible. Yes, sir, it's visible.
Thank you. Thank you. So these 2 slides were left in the last session. So let us cover it fast. The first query, which is a frequently asked question which people ask. The first query is, can strong controls let me skip substantive procedures entirely? So what does it say? If we have assessed, as auditors, we have assessed that the entity is having very strong controls. So does that allow me to skip substantive procedures? So the answer is definitely no, because SA 330 requires us to do some substantive work. So definitely it will depend on the degree of the risk which we have assessed based on our assessment of internal controls. If controls are strong, then substantive procedures we will be performing will be lower. And if the controls are not that strong, if those are weak, then definitely we will have to rely more on our substantive procedures, and accordingly we will have to increase our sample size, and we will have to focus more through analytical procedures as well. So this is definitely, the answer is no in this case. Second FAQ, which is critical to understand, is whether in case where detection risk is high, so is that a good thing or a bad thing? So when we say detection risk is high, so basically here we mean that scope for detection risk is high. And when it will happen? When your inherent risk and control risks together are lower, lesser. So in that case, since controls are strong and inherent risks are not that quite high, so in that situation, our scope for detection risk is quite high. So what it means? It means that we can accept doing less
Sir,
substantive work.
sir, the slide is not visible.
Slide is not visible.
Hmm.
Okay. Let me reshare it. Now it's visible.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Just a minute. Just allow me a moment.
Sure.
Ma'am, now it's visible.
No, sir.
Still not visible. Why
The
it is
file manager is visible. Like on the
okay, but
document
your
you have
slides are
clicked
not
on,
visible. No problem, no
it's
problem.
not
I got it.
opening.
Just a minute. Hope now this slide is visible.
Now it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we discussed one FAQ till now, that in case where controls are strong, but still we cannot skip substantive procedures. We can reduce our scope for substantive procedures based on the degree of risk which we have assessed through assessment of internal controls. So based on that, we can balance it. Then second FAQ related to detection risk is high. Is that good or bad? So in this case, as I discussed, that if the scope for detection risk is high, it means that inherent risk and control risk together are on a lesser side, on a lower side. So that is the reason why there is a higher scope of detection risk. So we can decrease our substantive procedures accordingly. So in this case, it's good to have higher detection risk, because that will save much of our effort in terms of audit. So this is with respect to the second FAQ. Third FAQ says which assertion is usually the biggest risk for liabilities. So for liabilities, there may be different assertions which may be impacting it. Existence may be an assertion which may be impacting it, right? Rights and obligations will be there, and accordingly other assertions are there which may impact an account balance related to liability. But the most important and most critical in respect of liabilities is to see the completeness. Why it is important? Because liabilities which are already recorded in the books of accounts, that is one problem, that whether those liabilities are reflecting at the right numbers or not. But if there are certain liabilities which are there, which are not recorded in the books of accounts, which is outside of the books, so that is a significant risk, and that is the biggest risk for liabilities. So in that case, assessing or ensuring that the liabilities are complete, That is one of the paramount objective of us as auditors. Now coming to the third FAQ, vouching versus tracing, how do I choose? As we discussed in the last session, that vouching we do for items which are there in the books of accounts. So from books, we go to source documents, data from books, whatever is reflecting in the books of accounts, we check through underlying supportings. So that is vouching. And generally we use vouching to test overstatement of balances and to ensure whether this transaction exists or not. But when it comes to tracing, there what we need to do, there we have to pick up the documents, data, information from outside the books, and then we trace it back to the books whether these transactions have been recorded or not. So it's a vice versa case. So this is important to identify the understatements and to test the completeness, to test the assertion of completeness. So that it is very important to understand that if it's the case of liability and we are testing it for completeness, testing it for assertion of completeness, then in that case we will have to trace the source back to books. Say for example, we come across a loan agreement, but that loan agreement, that particular, the corresponding loan is not reflecting in books of accounts. So that is what is called tracing, that we have traced a document and we are trying to trace it back to the books, but we could not identify that item. So it means that liabilities have not been provided for. So this is the biggest risk, which is completeness in case of liabilities. Then is a management prepared schedule audit evidence? Now what happens, say for example, we have asked for a list of, there is a vendor balance in the sundry creditors. In sundry creditors, there are say 10 parties and the aggregate balance is 10 crores. So there might be a possibility that party A is having a balance of 3 crores, party B is having a balance of 50 lakhs, and likewise for other parties, different balances may be there. In aggregate, total balance is 10 crores. Now, if we ask for the details of that 3 crore, which is reflecting in the trial balance, the client will provide us party-wise list of the breakup of that 3 crores. That these are the 10 parties with whom these are the balances which are due. So in that case, that schedule which has been provided by the management to us, whether we can consider it as an audit evidence, the fact is that we cannot consider it as an audit evidence. It will become audit evidence only when we have already tested it. So just obtaining a schedule from management is not an audit evidence. When we test that schedule with the underlying records and documents and data, then we can say that it is an audit evidence. If it has been documented appropriately, then it becomes an audit evidence. So first and foremost, what we will do, whatever breakup the client has provided to us, the total we will tally with the trial balance, whether the balance which is reflecting there of 3 crores, whether that 3 crore is reflecting as an aggregate of these 10 parties or not. This is the first test. And then out of those 10 parties, whichever parties we pick as samples to be tested further. So those procedures, after we perform those procedures, we can say that we have already verified it. And definitely we will discuss what procedures we have to follow. In this session, we will discuss that. So please keep in mind that just a fact that management has provided us with a schedule, it does not make it an audit evidence unless and until we have verified it. Right? Now, what's the single test a working paper must pass? So in the last session also, we discussed about the experienced auditor test. So who is an experienced auditor? Who does not have any prior connection with this audit engagement, but he is experienced enough to understand the process of audit. So documentation should be such, a working paper should be such that it is self-explanatory. And if an experienced auditor looks at it, he himself is able to understand the working paper in entirety. He does not have to ask questions to the preparer that on what basis this working paper, from where do you have picked this data, what is the source of this data, how you have matched it with the trial balance. Those things should be self-explanatory in the working paper itself. So if a working paper passes the test of experienced auditor, then only we can say that working paper is a complete working paper. It has been documented well and in compliance with the standards on auditing. So this is what about the FAQs. In case you have any queries, you can ask. Then we are moving forward to our next session, day 2. In the last session, so before I move to the next session, what I will do, let me just try to set the context of today's session. Take an example. Take an example that there are two auditors. Both the auditors are auditing the same client. One Mr. A is there, one Mr. B is there. Both have similar experience. Mr. A is also auditing the same entity. Mr. B is also auditing the same entity. So same client. Now, and they are being given the same item to be tested, which is trade payables. Both the auditors have to test trade payables. Both the auditors derive the sample size based on their assessment of internal controls and all, and they arrive at 40 samples, that I need to test 40 samples based on my judgment to complete the process of test of details, which is a part of substantive procedures. So both of them identifies 40 samples as the sample size. So here we are at a situation where there are two different auditors auditing the same client, auditing trade payables, and both have identified that 40 samples needs to be tested. And both are doing the audit on the same Tuesday afternoon. In this situation, Mr. A is actually doing the real audit. But what Mr. B is doing, he is just pretending to do audit. He is not actually doing the real audit. So what is the difference between the two? The difference lies in only the direction of testing. I will explain you how. Why direction matters a lot, that it makes one auditor a good auditor and the other auditor a checklist auditor. Why? So that we will understand. In the last session, we understood the chain, that we have identified the risks, risk assessment has been done, and based on the risk, we have identified that these are the assertions for which we have to test a particular item, that these are the assertions which are going to impact it. For those assertions, we are testing it. Then the next step, which we discussed in the last session, was based on the assertion, we will assess the nature, timing, and extent of our procedures. What will be the nature of our procedure, whether we will be performing analytical procedure, whether we will be performing test of details, that we will identify. We will identify whether we will check it at the year end, or we can do this testing even during the interim period. So timing also we will decide, and extent of testing. How many samples we have to test, that extent of testing we need to decide. So that was the next stage. Then post that, we have to perform the procedures, the audit procedures we have decided considering the nature, timing, and extent, and we had to gather evidences by doing our procedures, and those evidences become our audit evidences, which can be reproduced if at all required in any court of law going forward. If anyone asks us to demonstrate that we have actually tested and what was the basis, this will be the flow which will demonstrate it. Today what we will do, In the last session, we discussed about the architecture of substantive procedures. Today, I will explain you the craft of doing substantive procedures. Last time we did architecture. In this session, we will be doing the craft of substantive procedures, how to do it. Last time we did why to do it. Today we will do how to do it. Right? So today I'll be handing over the instruments to you, instruments of doing substantive procedures. Now it will be up to you that whether you are able to create that understanding, grasp that understanding, which tool to be used when. That I will definitely let you know today how to use a particular tool judiciously, that we will discuss. But if at all you pick the wrong tool for some assertion, say for example, we had to check the assertion of completeness. And as discussed, for checking the completeness of trade payables, we have to do the tracing instead of vouching. But you pick the tool of vouching instead of tracing. Then what will happen? You will not fetch the result what you want. What will happen? You will end up doing wrong procedure which was not meant for testing that assertion. So picking the right tool becomes very important. Now coming back to the same example, what the first auditor did, he picked up all those 40 samples. 40 samples he tested with underlying supportings, with invoices, with underlying transporter challan, with underlying lorry receipts and all, e-way bills, all the documents he tested. And he could not find any critical gap in any of those samples. So based on that, he has concluded that okay, trade payables is fine, there is no issue which needs to be raised or which needs to be discussed with the management, and based on that he concluded that there is no issue at all in trade payables. Whereas what the second auditor did what the first auditor did, he did that, but in addition to that, what other procedures he performed for that trade payables for ensuring the assertion of completeness. The first auditor did not consider the assertion of completeness because he has done the vouching. He did not do the tracing. What the other auditor did, he picked up the GRN register, that these are the goods received notes. This is the register of all the goods received note during the period. So he has taken the goods received register. He took the supplier statements also, that vendor ledger. He also checked the subsequent payments which were made to the vendors. He tried to identify if any payments against which liability was not there in the previous year. If any such item is identified, that even though this particular item belonged to the previous year, but no provision was created against it. In the last session, we discussed about the electricity bill, which did not get provisioned. Consider the same case, that he could not identify electricity bill while vouching for the previous year. Electricity bill he could not identify. But when he checked the subsequent year payments, then definitely till the period, till the time we issue the audit report, only till then we will be able to check. So subsequent payments, when we checked, we identified that electricity bill in respect of March has been paid in April, but that March bill has actually been received in April, but there was no provision against it in the books of accounts. So that gives us an indication that electricity bill provision had to be created in the previous year, which the management has missed to create. Similarly, he will also be able to identify if there are any cutoff issues, say purchases for which GRN was issued in the previous year itself, but invoice was not booked, liability was not booked, but expense was debited. Purchases was booked in the previous year, but invoice was yet to be booked. So in this case, he will be able to identify that this invoice booking is still pending. So that item also he will be able to identify. And similarly, so what happened? So here the only difference between the two auditors is that the other auditor, he tried to test the assertion of completeness as well by performing subsequent procedures. So that's the only difference. So this is the difference between a real auditor and a checklist auditor. Got it? So here in this case, same 40 samples were there, same number of samples were selected by both, but one auditor has been able to perform the duty really well because he tested each of the assertions which impact that particular account balance. Right? So always keep it in mind. For completeness, we need to do tracing, and we cannot resort only to vouching. We will have to do the tracing exercise, then only we will be able to identify unrecorded liabilities. And if you ask me one word which differentiates between both the auditors, is direction of testing. One direction was vouching, the other direction was tracing. So he picked the wrong direction. That is the reason he could not test the assertion of completeness through that. So now let us pick up. Let me try to hand over the instruments to you through this session. Let me share the PPT with you, and hope once you pick up these instruments, you will be able to use those instruments judiciously in your practical application. So let me just share the PPT with you. Allow me a minute. Till now, anyone is having any questions, you may ask, else I will move to today's session. Okay.
Yes,
Hope
sir.
the screen is visible.
Yeah. Where is
Yeah, any question, ma'am?
Yeah. Materiality, performance materiality, and benchmarking determining materiality.
No, I didn't get it. Can you repeat it once again?
What is materiality, performance materiality, and benchmarking determining materiality?
Okay. So this anyways we had discussed at length in the previous session, but since you have asked this question, then I'll re-explain it. Not a problem. So materiality is something which is a kind of threshold for the auditor. So based on the professional judgment of the auditor, based on the degree of his professional skepticism, he decides on a number, that this particular number is important to me. Anything beyond this number, any misstatement beyond this number will force me to modify my opinion. That number is called materiality, which in view of the auditor may impact the decisions of the users of the financial statements. So how do we derive that number? You talked about benchmark also. So for deriving the figure of materiality, we pick up a benchmark. That benchmark can be revenue also, that benchmark can be profit before taxes also, that benchmark can be any other number, which is the most consistent and most stable number in the financial statements of the entity. Say for example, we pick up a number revenue. The revenue for the current period, we see that the revenue for the current period in the entity is 100 crores. And we, based on our judgment, based on the assessment of the controls in the organization, based on the assessment of inherent risk, we decide that we will pick up a number of 2% of revenue as our materiality figure. Any misstatement beyond 2% of revenue will force me to reassess my opinion. So in this case, since 100 crores is the revenue, 2% of 100 crores is 2 crores. So my maturity figure comes to 2 crores. That is my overall maturity. But I don't want to take a risk that I don't want to take my misstatements when I do my when I perform my procedures. I want to keep some cushion for my detection risk as well. That even though I am checking a particular item, there is a risk that I may miss some important aspect in it. So for keeping that cushion on the maturity, we reduce maturity by a certain extent to arrive at the performance maturity. In this case, 2 crores we arrived as overall maturity. So maybe 50% or 75% of maturity we can consider as performance maturity. That anything beyond this, we will have to reassess that whether it is going to impact our opinion or not. So that will act as an alarm for us. So that we call performance maturity. So hope now it is clear to you, whatever I explained you. Hope it's clear. So I am moving ahead. So in case any further query is there, you can ask, no problem. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this chain we discussed that yesterday we left off that risk, assertion, nature, timing, extent, procedure and evidence. This chain we got in the day one, and today we will be opening the toolbox and we will learn each instrument, how to use that instrument. So our toolkit has these items which we'll be discussing today. The first one is test of details. It includes 8 techniques which we'll be discussing. The other item is vouching versus tracing, that anyways we have discussed at length. So which direction we have to opt in which case, that we need to see. We will again discuss it further in detail in this session. Then the third item we will be discussing is substantive analytical procedures, that is SA 520. We will discuss about how to build a robust expectation. So when we perform analytical procedures, while performing such analytical procedures, we have to build certain expectations and compare those expectations with the actual numbers which are reflecting in the books of accounts of the entity. So how to build those expectations, how to build robust expectations so that the difference with the actual number which is there in the financial statements, that gives me the correct picture whether actually there is any misstatement or not. So how to make good expectation, that I will let you know. Then fifth aspect is audit sampling. Anyways, SA 530 deals with it, we are all aware of it, so we will discuss that as well. What are the sampling methods and which are the sample size drivers? Which are the factors which actually drive the sample size? Is it the population? Is it the tolerance limit? So that we will discuss. We will then discuss about the external confirmations, that is dealt by SA 505, that how to obtain external confirmations, what are the things which we need to keep in mind while obtaining external confirmations. Cutoff and search for unrecorded liabilities. So as we discussed, that tracing is a tool through which we can search for unrecorded liabilities, and what are the other tools apart from the tracing through which we can identify unrecorded liabilities, that we will discuss. And we will also discuss about the cutoff, that whether whether this period item has postponed to the next period or next period items have been preponed to this period. So how to trace, how to check that, how to identify that, we will discuss that as well. Then how to assemble the substantive audit program, how to assemble the whole substantive audit program, that we will discuss. And we will also cover few frequently asked questions as well. And definitely whatever queries you will be having, I will address those queries as well. Now coming to the test of details. So these are the 8 evidence gathering techniques. These are the 8 techniques through which we gather What is inspection of records? When we inspect, say, invoices, when we inspect the other supporting documents which are underlying the invoices, when we inspect the agreements and contracts, when we read through the minutes of meetings, all these items fall under the purview of inspection of records. So this is the first tool which we use as part of substantive procedures. Say there is a property which has been taken on rent by the entity. So definitely there will be a rent agreement underlying it. So we will have to obtain the rental agreement. We will have to go through it to identify the most critical terms and conditions which are there in the rental agreement. What is the rent? What is the escalation clause? What is the validity of this agreement? Whether this agreement is still effective or not? What is the rental which has been allowed by this agreement? Is there any maintenance also which needs to be paid along with the rent? So all these aspects we will get to know from the rental agreement. So unless and until we inspect the rental agreement, we will not be justifiably doing the audit of rent. So inspecting records is equally important. Similarly, minutes of meetings. So what will happen? All the major decisions of an entity are generally taken at the board level. Unless and until we read through minutes of meetings, we will not be able to know that what major business decisions or what major developments are there in the organization. And unless and until we are aware of the business developments, we will not be able to identify the risks associated with it, which may be significant at times. Since those decisions are being taken at board level, there is a high probability that those will give rise to significant risk from audit perspective. So it is very important to go through the minutes. So similarly, there may be other documents, there may be other records which are extremely critical to be inspected. Similarly, the next item, next technique which we follow is inspection of assets. As we discussed in the last session as well, that we conduct or we observe the conduct of physical verification of inventory items, of fixed assets item. So we inspect those assets to see whether those are actually existing or not, or whether those are actually working or not. Are those are not they obsolete but still reflecting in books at full value? So these things are identified through inspection of assets. We get to know that whatever value at which inventory is lying in books, whatever value at which property, plant and equipment is lying in books, whether it holds the real value or not. There is a possibility that against an expected inventory of say 1 lakh units, only 80,000 units are there, and rest 20,000 have been stolen. So definitely that adjustment have to be made in the books of accounts. Unless and until we inspect the assets ourselves or we observe the physical verification process of inspection of those assets, we will not get that comfort on that inventory. Then the third item is observation. So we have to watch a process being performed. Say, as part of our walkthrough process, we get to know that there is a maker checker control in case of bank reconciliation statement. So one thing what we can do is we can observe the process happening ourselves. We see that the entity, that the person who is made responsible in that entity for doing that function, he is generating the bank statement, he is generating the bank ledger, and then how he is comparing the two, then how he is making that report of bank reconciliation statement, then how he is presenting it to the checker, and what the checker is doing on that bank reconciliation statement. If we are observing this process, this is called observation. Similarly, if they themselves are conducting physical verification of inventory and we are just observing it, that whether proper proper process has been followed or not, whether adequate controls are being exercised while doing that or not. So all those things are ensured when we are observing. So observation is again the third technique which we use. Then fourth is external confirmation. External confirmation, as we discussed in the last session, that we can obtain from bankers, also suppliers, debtors, legal counsel. So whenever we are directly obtaining a confirmation from a third party with which the company has transacted or is dealing with, that confirmation is called external confirmation. There may be two ways. Either we can obtain the external confirmation directly. We directly send the request to the vendor of the company and say that we are the auditors of this company and we need confirmation of balance and transactions from your end. So that is one way. And the other way is we ask the client to get the confirmation from that party and submit it to us. So what is actually required to be done is we have to directly obtain the external confirmation so that there should not be any risk that the client may fiddle with that confirmation at their end. If we get it directly from the third party, that gives us more comfort. So that is a process which is followed for confirming the bank balances, confirming debtors, creditors, advances, litigations. For all those we use external confirmation as a tool. Then the fifth tool for test of details is recalculation. So as discussed even in the last session, that if we are recalculating the depreciation calculation provided by the client to us, the commission calculation provided to us by the client, if we are recalculating it to see that whether it is arithmetically correct or not, accurate or not, so that exercise is called recalculation. This is also a tool which we use as part of the test of details. Now, reperformance. Reperformance refers to, say, they had a process that there is a maker checker control on bank reconciliation statement. They have a process of doing physical verification of inventory. Now, from our end, we have decided to perform that process ourselves and see whether it fetches the same result or not. We ourselves will extract the data of bank statement. We ourselves will pull the data of bank ledger. We will ourselves compare it. We will see that the reconciling items which are reflecting, which we have identified by reperforming, whether those reconciling items are there in the bank reconciliation statement provided by the client or not. If there are any differences, then definitely it raises question on the control. So this is called reperformance. Now, vouching tracing, this we have already discussed, that vouching refers to picking an item from the books of accounts and checking it with the underlying supportings. That is vouching. And tracing is identifying a source document or data and tracing it back to the books. And more specifically, in case of liabilities, tracing is very, very important to ensure the assertion of completeness. And the last tool which we use is inquiry. And if you see within brackets, plus corroborate is given. So what does it mean? So mere inquiry from the management or the process owner may not be complete. We can definitely inquire from the management, we can definitely inquire from the process owners that what actually has happened, why it has happened, how it has happened. So all those things we can definitely inquire from the management and they will respond to it as well. But whatever they respond to, we will have to corroborate those responses with the facts too. We will have to see that whatever they are saying, that is getting corroborated with the underlying documents and records or not. So inquiry alone is not sufficient. It has to be corroborated by facts too. So please keep it in mind. So these are the 8 tools which help us gather evidence as part of test of details procedures. Hope everyone is clear on it. I am moving to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about direction, vouching versus tracing. This we have discussed at length. If you see that ledger to source document is vouching, where source document to ledger is tracing. Vouching is used to test existence and validity and occurrence of a transaction, whether the transaction which is reflecting in the books of accounts is actually valid or not, whether it actually exists or not. What it catches, it generally catches the overstatements and if any fictitious entries have been passed against which there are no underlying supportings. So those types of transactions are caught through vouching. Example is given here. One purchase has been recorded against which supplier invoice is there and GRN is there. So what does it denote? That we have received the goods also and we have corresponding to that we have booked the invoice, and that is why purchase is reflecting here. So that is vouching. About tracing, tracing is majorly used to check to test the assertion of completeness, as we discussed. It helps us catch the understatement. It helps us identify the items which went unrecorded, which had to be recorded in the current period but did not get recorded. So those items we are able to identify through tracing. One example here which is given here, that GRN near the year end, whether liability has actually been booked or not. As part of the cutoff testing we do this, that we identify the year end GRNs and see that when actually the goods have been received. Maybe goods have been received subsequent to year end, but we have booked the liability in the current year itself, or vice versa. If you look at these two, this seems mirror images, but the way to look at it, the direction to choose will decide on whether you have used the right tool or you have used the wrong tool. Now, we have to see that which assertion is tested by which technique. Just to give you an indication that if our procedure is physical inspection or count, then through this, which primary assertion we are trying to address, that is of existence. And where do we use it? We generally use it in inventory, property, plant and equipment, cash verification we do. So in these cases, we generally do physical inspection. There may be other cases too. These are only symbolic items which I'm just trying to show you that in these items, it is typically being used. External confirmation similarly. So through external confirmations, 2 assertions are addressed. One, whether that particular account balance or transaction is existing or not. So existence of that transaction is validated through external confirmations, and rights and obligations to that balance, whether actually it is receivable or not, or actually it is payable or not. So that is confirmed through external confirmation because that is being acknowledged by the other party, by the third party. So this we use generally in case of debtors, banks, loans, creditors, advances and all. We use this technique. Then vouching to source. So vouching, when we are talking about vouching, it means that we are talking about books to source. So through this, we test whether the transaction is actually valid or not, it has actually occurred or not, and whether this transaction is actually existing or not. It is an actual transaction or not. So generally we use this for expenses, additions in fixed assets or other assets, and sales. So similarly, there may be other items on which we can use this tool. The next is tracing from source. As we discussed, that it addresses the assertion of completeness. It is typically used in case of liabilities and also in case of revenue cutoffs. So cutoff, sometime back we discussed about GRN also, not only revenue cutoff, in fact, it can be used for doing cutoff testing even for purchases also. Recalculation, reperformance, this we discussed, and this particularly addresses the assertions of accuracy and valuation. And generally these are used for items like depreciation, provisions, payroll. And finally, the analytical procedures. Analytical procedures are generally used for addressing the assertions of completeness and accuracy. And where we use it? We use it for P&L line items. We use it in certain ratios. So this is a typical chart which indicates that which procedure addresses which assertion and where in which types of items we use these types of procedures. This particular chart shows that. Now coming to SA 520, hope test of details understanding you have gathered. So this is a basic understanding of test of details. Definitely in the next session we will do it ourselves. It will be a workshop type of session. The next session, there you will do it yourself. You will use all the techniques which we have discussed here right now, right? So now moving to SA 520, that is substantive analytical procedures. As we discussed, analytical procedures refers to those procedures where we try to create plausible relationships between two variables. It may be a financial data, it may be a non-financial data, right? So in this case, where we can use substantive analytical procedures, it is most powerful where relationships are predictable. So where we can predict relationships, where there is a pattern, where there is a trend. So there we use substantive analytical procedures, and definitely there where volumes are extremely high. Say there is a particular ledger which has 1 lakh line items. How many samples we will test as test of details? We will test say 50 samples, 100 samples, 200 samples. Can we check 20,000 samples? Can we check 50,000 samples? We cannot. So in those situations, if we are able to identify a particular pattern, we are able to identify a relationship or a predictable relationship, then definitely substantive analytical procedure can help you significantly in getting comfort on that account balance. So how do we do it? We develop an expectation. Sometime back we discussed about developing an expectation. What do we mean by it? So in my previous session, I had given you one example that I'm trying to build an expectation for salary cost. So for that, what I have obtained 2-3 major critical information from the HR department. The first information which I gathered from HR is the headcount detail. What has been the average headcount in the previous year and what is the average headcount in the current year? Maybe we can obtain it grade wise to make it more accurate. So what was the grade wise headcount of the previous year? What is the grade wise headcount of the current year? Then the second information which we have obtained from them is the increment percentage. What has been the salary increment percentage across the grades? So HR may give an information that across the board we have given an increment of 10%. So that information also we have gathered. Now we have two information set. One is that what is the increment percentage across the board. Second is what is the headcount, the difference in the headcount of the previous year and the current year. What is the difference in the average headcount, which will determine my cost. So using these two information, I can build an expectation of salary cost for the current year, considering the past year cost. In the past year, say the average headcount was 100 people and the salary cost was 1 crore, right? So, and in the current year, I see that average headcount is 120 people and the cost which is reflecting in the financial statements in respect of salary is 1 crore 50 lakhs. So the cost has increased by 50%, where the average headcount has increased by only 20%. But then again, I got to know that the company has given 10% increment to all the employees across the board. So definitely that will increase the cost from the past year in the current year by 10%. So what we have done, that 20% increase which we have identified is attributable to the corresponding increase in the headcount, average headcount, and 10% of the increase is attributable to the increment percentage. So in totality, we have arrived at the figure of 30% as against 50% increase. Now still I can see that 20% increase is still not explained to me. It is still not explained to me. Then I'll definitely ask the concerned process owner that what this 20% belong to. There might be certain reasons, like say for example, in the last year, the grade A, which has the highest pay, in that one person has left and 2 people have joined. However, in grade 2, say 5 people have left and 10 people have joined. So higher salary grades, more people have joined and less people have left, and vice versa. In lower grades where salary levels are low, there lesser people have left, more people have left and lesser people have joined. So if that's the situation, definitely that will impact the cost as well. There may be other reasons to it as well, but what does it say? This analytical procedure told us that we need to further drill down into it to see that whether this gap is valid or not, whether there is a genuine reason to it or not. If in the same situation we saw that the salary cost was 1 crore 32 lakhs in the current year in place of 1 crore 50 lakhs, and in the previous year it was 1 crore, so 30% deviation we have been able to quantify, and we see that we expected an amount of 1 crore 30 lakhs. Against that we see that there is an amount of 1 crore 32 lakhs. What does it say? What does it indicate? That there is no major material misstatement in this, because there is a gap of only 2 lakhs, and that gap may be there. Maybe someone was absent for a few days. Any reason may be there. So this is still within the threshold which I have set for building the expectation. So that will give me a good comfort on the overall population. If I couple it with few sample tests, few test of details, then this has the ability to give me really good comfort on the salary cost. So similarly, this is I mean by develop an expectation. We have set a threshold. So setting a threshold means, say for a population of 1 crore in the previous year and 1 crore 32 lakhs in the current year. So we set a threshold that if I get a variance of say 2%, and this threshold we set at the time of clearly trivial threshold when we compute at the time of planning maturity and overall maturity and performance maturity, we also calculate one clearly trivial threshold. In the previous session we discussed that 5% of the maturity was considered as CTT. The figure was 2,50,000 if you remember in the last session. So if we consider 2,50,000 as our threshold, then in the present case, since we have arrived at an expectation of 1 crore 30 lakhs, where the account balance reflected a balance of 1 crore 32 lakhs, So the difference is only 2 lakhs, which is within the limit which has been set by me of 2.5 lakhs. So in that case, I will not pursue it further. I can stop my procedures then and there. But in the first case, where the difference was more than 2 lakhs, the difference was of 1 crore 50 lakhs and 1 crore 30 lakhs. 20 lakh difference was there. There definitely we will have to further drill it down because it exceeds our threshold. It exceeds our clearly trivial threshold. Then the third step will be, we will compute based on our expectation, we will compute and we will compare it with the actual figure, what is reflecting in the books of accounts. And we will isolate the variance to see whether it surpasses the threshold or not. And the last step will be, either we will investigate the difference. If major difference is there, we will investigate it and we will corroborate that difference with facts. If we are able to do that, then your substantive and analytical procedure is complete. Coming to the next slide. So what are the important aspects which helps you build a robust expectation? So first and foremost, I have seen in my past experience that many people choose the wrong data for building expectation. What they do, take an example that salary cost of 1 crore 32 lakhs or 1 crore 50 lakhs is reflecting in the books of accounts. We cannot use the same data to create an expectation, right? If we say, if we divide 1 crore 50 lakhs by 12, we arrive at a figure of 12 lakh 50,000 per month, and then again we multiply it by 12, we will definitely get 1 crore 50 lakhs only. So I have seen in many working papers in my career that expectation was built like that. They are using the same data set for building expectation, and then they are comparing it with the figure which is reflecting there, and they are reaching a difference of 0 and saying that since it is matched, so the balance is okay. So this procedure is not appropriate. So what it says, we have to build the expectation from data not derived from the figure you are testing. So the figure which we are testing, that should not be used for building the expectation. Many a times people make this mistake. Second, the precision. The tighter the prediction, the stronger the evidence. In the previous example, what we took grade-wise details of increment, grade-wise details of headcount from the HR. We could have taken the total number of average headcount. We could have taken the increment percentage, average increment percentage across all the grades. That was also one way. But if we take it grade wise, and if the percentages are different or average headcount detail is different, then you will arrive at a more precise expectation. Then it will be closer to reality. So to create stronger evidences and to create tighter predictions, we have to use as precise data as possible. Averaging is the biggest culprit, I'm telling you, because it dilutes a lot of outliers. If any outlier is there, it will dilute it. So to the extent possible, we have to de-average that. The next point says that only, that we have to resort to disaggregation. Aggregation is the biggest culprit. So we have to desegregate the data which we are working on by month, by products, by location. Then it will give us a better indication. Then it will give us lead to a better comparison with the other data, with the other variable. So here one example is given with respect to power cost in a plywood mill, where an expectation of electricity cost is being built. units produced, how many units we have produced, into kilowatt hour per unit, how much kilowatt hour per unit was used to produce 1 unit of item, into the rate, the tariff. If we calculate this, if you see these numbers, none of these numbers have been taken from the data we are testing. The data we are testing, electricity cost. Here we are not using electricity cost in any of these variable. So that is why it is said each input is independent of the recorded power expense. So a close match is genuine evidence and a gap is a real flag worth chasing. Either there is a case of electricity theft, or there may be a case of meter error, or there may be a case of misposting too. So hope this is clear to you. Moving ahead. Till now, any queries, sir?
Yes, sir. There is one query.
Yeah.
Sir, these days external parties are getting fixed in pre-planned manner and management is escaping with proper training to external parties. Example,
just a moment,
pay
ma'am. Just a
status.
moment. Ma'am, just
Yeah.
a moment. Actually, I spilled water on my laptop. Just a minute. Just allow me a moment. 1 minute. दिलीप जी इसको क्लीन कीजिए ना पानी के लिए. Yeah, sorry, ma'am, can you just repeat what you said?
Yes, sir. I have pasted in chat box also. You can read from there.
Pardon?
I have pasted in chat box also.
Okay. Let me see. 1 minute. Yeah. Sir, these days external parties are getting fixed in pre-planned manner and management is escaping with proper training to external parties. Example, fake daters. Sir, how to handle this? Which tool suits this kind of situation, sir? Okay. Got it. Yeah. Sorry. Getting fixed in pre-planned manner and management is escaping with proper training to external parties. Into external party, example, fake daters, sir, how to handle this? See, again, every organization implements controls in the organization to identify such situations. What happens? Even onboarding of customers or onboarding of vendors also has certain controls. They have the background check done. They have the check of related party identification. If any interest of any of the employee or management is there in that party, so those aspects are taken care of to the extent practicable. Definitely depends on the control which is being exercised by the management. But again, definitely this is a risk that external parties are somewhere linked with some of our employees or even the management people. That risk is always there. So that is the reason why we consider inherent risk and why we consider control risk as well. So that is the reason. So even after we do the audit, there is a possibility that something still gets missed out by us too, because fraud is something which is intentional and they are aware of all the nitty-gritties of how to hide a fraud. So identifying a fraud is not an easy task. If that was so easy, then apart from the statutory audit, people would not have looked for forensic accounting, right? So as statutory auditors, it's not our responsibility to identify frauds, but in case we come across any such situation in course of our audit, then definitely we need to flag it. We need to discuss it with the management. We need to discuss it with TCWG, and accordingly we need to act. And accordingly we need to see whether it will impact our reporting as well or not. But yes, as you said, these are the risks which are there, which were always there earlier also, and now also it is there. But if you have robust controls surrounding it, then definitely it can take care of it to an extent, but eradicating it completely is not very easy. I'm telling you very, very honestly. Yeah. So coming back to the presentation. Just a minute. Yeah. Okay. So just look at this example, which is a worked example where we have done some analytical procedure on the interest on term loan. So here what we have done, how we have built this expectation, we computed the average loan outstanding. Opening balance of the loan was 900 and closing balance is 700. We added the two and divided by 2 to arrive at an average loan outstanding balance of 800. And we have noted that the applicable interest rate is 9.5% per annum. Then we built an expectation that 76 rupees should be the expected interest. 76 lakhs should be the expected interest. But as per books, we saw that the figure is 71.2. Then we arrive at a difference of 4.8 lakhs, which is 6.3% of the population. And since our critical, clearly trivial threshold, CTT, was fixed at 2.5 lakhs, and this 4.8 lakhs exceeds the threshold of 2.5 lakhs, it definitely warrants further investigation. When we investigated it further, we could identify that one of the loan was partly repaid in Q1. So we considered that and we recomputed our monthly balances to arrive at the revised expectation, and the revised expectation we reached was 70.9, which was really close to 71.2, and the differential was well within the threshold of 2.5 lakhs. And based on that, we concluded that variance has been fully explained and corroborated, so interest expense is reasonable to that extent. Okay, hope this example is clear to everyone. Okay. Where analytical procedures go wrong. The first one is circular expectations. As we discussed, that the balance we are testing, if the same balance we are using for building expectation, that process itself is wrong, and that is called circular expectation. We cannot use the figure which we are testing for the purpose of building expectation. We have to use some other variables. So this is the first aspect which we need to keep in mind. Next is loose thresholds. So if we do not consider the CTT and at account balance level, we decide, okay, we will take 5% or 10% of the population as the threshold. If the misstatement, if the difference is within that threshold, we will not look into it further. But ideally, that shouldn't be the process. We cannot use loose thresholds. It should not be so wide that misstatements get hidden within those thresholds. So we need to be very judicious when we fix thresholds too. And third is accepting explanations uncritically. So what happens, say for example, we have built one expectation, we compared it with an actual number, we derived a difference, and if that difference, for that difference, if the client is giving a certain explanation, just accepting the explanation at the face of it will not serve purpose. We will have to critically examine the explanations given by the entity for those differences. So we need to corroborate those explanations against the facts, with the facts. Just giving a plausible story shall not act as an evidence unless and until it has been corroborated with facts. So whatever reason they are giving to us, that this is the reason for this difference, as in the previous example, we discussed that in Q1 certain loan was repaid, which we did not factor in our calculation. When we got to know that, and that is a factual data, that is a historical data, so that we used as corroboration of the explanation which was given to us. So that corroboration of information is very, very important. If at all we are getting any explanation from the management, it has to be corroborated with the genuine facts. Then only you can create a story around it. Just listening from them and accepting explanations at the face value will not serve purpose. Now, using substantive analytical procedures or unpredictable items. Up, take an example that we are considering the ledger of legal and professional charges. So in legal and professional charges, the expenses will be highly dependent on the litigation events. So as and when a litigation event happens, then only we will incur legal and professional expenses. If we try to build an expectation for legal and professional charges, will we be able to, if that is event based? So that is a wrong choice of the tool. If we try to apply substantive analytical procedures on that kind of ledger, then definitely it will be a futile exercise. So wherever predictability is not there in the items, some pattern or trend is not there, there we cannot use substantive analytical procedures. We cannot use substantive analytical procedures for one-off, volatile, or judgmental balances. When it says judgmental balances, it refers to certain estimates, or maybe some impairment testing was done by them, or some going concern projections were prepared by them and provided to us. On those items, creating an expectation on certain data, on certain assumptions will not give us the right picture. So there we need to, on those kind of items, we need to, like legal and professional charges, we need to test those items through test of details rather than analytical procedures. Now coming to audit sampling. Now we are coming to SA 530. Since we do not test 100%, we cannot. So sampling is something which gives us a comfort or cushion to arrive at a conclusion about the whole population. However, what is very important in case of sampling, that every item has to have an equal chance of selection. So when we do sampling, we need to be very, very judicious. We need to understand the nature of the population. We need to understand the nature of the items to do sampling. So there are two types of risks which are involved in case of sampling. The first is sampling risk, which refers to that we have picked up wrong sample. The sample is not representative of the whole population. We have picked up an unusual item which is not related to the usual items. So if we base our opinion on that, then we will arrive at a wrong conclusion. And when it comes to non-sampling risk, it refers to the human error. There may be a good auditor, there may be a bad auditor. We should have used, say an example, we should have used vouching as a procedure, but we used tracing, or vice versa. So wrong procedure has been applied. We have missed certain exceptions which were clearly visible from the ledger. So that is why what we do, in addition to sampling, we also do ledger scrutiny to identify any unusual items. Then poor judgment. So we did not use right judgment while doing the sampling, while doing testing, right? So these are the two risks which this audit sampling may contain. Now, there are three terms which we need to understand. The first is population. Population is nothing but the full set of data. Say, for example, there is printing a stationery head in the trial balance having an amount of 10 lakhs. And when we generate its ledger, we see that there are 500 line items. So that total 10 lakhs is the population. Even though it is having 500 line items, the total of that full set of data is called population, right? Then sampling unit. Sampling unit can be anything. It can be a voucher, it can be a balance, it can be a rupee. Anything can be a sampling unit depending on the nature of the item. Then tolerable misstatement. So again, tolerable misstatement, in our case, we had fixed a clearly trivial threshold of 2.5 lakhs, which was 5% of the materiality. So what tolerable misstatement says, it says that it is the maximum misstatement we will accept in the population. We cannot accept beyond 2.5 lakhs in the whole population. Or if we are testing the overall account balance itself, so in that case, it should not exceed the performance materiality in any case. So that tolerance level is called tolerable misstatement. Okay. Now, selecting the sample. So what are the sampling methods which are available? So these are the most prevalent method. The last one is generally not used. The first is random sampling. So every item has equal chance of being picked up. So it is by using random number generator, we can pick up samples. Second is systematic sampling. Here what we do, we will pick every 10th item or every 5th item. So we are applying a systematic process to identify, to pick up the samples. So from any number we will start, and from that, after that number, every nth number, every nth item will be picked as a sample. So that is another method. Then the third method is monetary unit sampling. So this method is very prevalent. It is being used by most of the large firms as well. So here what we do, we select items based on the weight. We use weight also as for picking the samples. So here what we do, say there are 5 line items in a ledger. The first line item is having an amount of say 5 lakhs. Second line item is having an amount of 50 lakhs. Third line item is having an amount of 10 lakhs, and the rest of the two is having 5 lakhs each. And say for example, we fixed a number of 10 lakhs. So first sample, since it is having a value of 5 lakhs, it will not get picked because the limit of 10 lakhs which we have set is not getting fulfilled here. So what will happen when we go to the next sample, which is having a 50 lakhs value? So in that 50 lakhs value, there is a probability that that sample will be picked definitely. It's a 100% probability that it will be picked, because that 10 lakh threshold which we have fixed, that is getting fulfilled in the second sample. Then we move to the third sample, which is again 10 lakhs. That sample will also be picked, and the next sample of 5 lakh each, maybe the fourth sample will not be picked, but the fifth sample will be picked, since that 10 lakh threshold is again getting met. So it is a cumulative balance. Please mind it. It is done based on accumulation. Individually, we are not looking at the balances. It is a cumulative balance which is used in monetary unit sampling. So that is the reason, even if a balance is lesser than the threshold which we have fixed, that also can be picked up if cumulatively, if it exceeds that amount. So that is monetary unit sampling. Then haphazard sampling. This is not a structured technique, but no conscious bias is there. Any sample can be picked. And block concept is there, where certain contiguous items, we generally avoid this, so I'm not discussing it any further. Okay, so this slide is very important. Please look into it really carefully. In case where the assessed ROMs, risk of material misstatements, have higher risk, if it increases higher and there is a higher risk, then definitely the sample size will be more, because we have assessed higher ROMs. So the sample size should be more, because we will have to rely more on our substantive procedures. In case tolerable misstatement, if we increase tolerable misstatement, so as much we increase the tolerable misstatement, our sample size will reduce, and lower the tolerable misstatement, the sample size will be higher. The third is expected misstatement. If we expect more errors, then definitely risk of expected misstatement is high. So it means assessed ROM is high. So in that case, definitely the sample size will again increase. So we will have to resort to larger sample size. Then next is reliance on controls or other procedures. We can rely more on it because the controls are robust in this case. So in this case, if controls are robust, then definitely we can go with smaller sample size as well. The next is stratification of population. So there is one concept of stratified sampling. So based on the nature, or based on the type, we can dissect the population into different stratas. And from each strata, we can pick up samples. So that helps us get higher comfort with smaller sample set. The next is population size. If the population is very large, then also the effect of it on the sample size is not much. There is a little effect only. It will have effect, but it will have very little effect. So if you see this chart, what is clearly indicated here, that assessment of ROM plays a pivotal role in determining the sample size. Fixation of tolerance limit again plays a significant role in determining the sample size. The expected misstatement, definitely it is for assessed risk of material misstatement only. And if control risks are high, then definitely again the assessed ROMs will be high, and accordingly our sample size will be higher. So these are the items which have more impact on the sample size than just having a larger population. So please keep it in mind. Assessed ROMs, risk of material misstatement, and fixation of tolerance limit. These two are the most important factors which determine the sample size. But general perception is if population is bigger, then we will pick up more samples. If population is smaller, then we'll pick up less samples. But that's not always a fact. We will also have to consider the assessed ROMs, and we also have to consider the tolerance limit, which we are going to set based on the assessment of controls. Moving to the next slide. Just try to see this example. It will give you a very good idea about what we are talking about. Here, if you see, there is a population of 4,200 creditors, which is of which the aggregate value is 742 lakhs. So there are 4,200 creditors in a ledger, and we see that the total is 742 lakhs. Since in our previous session we had computed overall maturity, we also computed performance maturity. We see that performance maturity which was fixed by us was 32.5 lakhs. So any item, any creditor out of this 742 lakhs or out of these 4,200 creditors, if any creditor surpasses this threshold of 32.5 lakhs, that becomes a key item for me and I will have to test it. That becomes a compulsion for me that I will have to test it. So any item in the creditor which is exceeding the performance maturity level, that becomes a key item and that has to be tested 100%. So we identified 18 such balances out of the 4,200 creditors. 18 such balances were there which were exceeding the threshold of 32.5 lakhs. So these 18 samples I will have to test. And the aggregate of these 18 samples is 511 lakhs. 5.11 crores is getting covered here itself. So this 5.11 crores is close to 69% of the total population. So only 18 creditors, if I test these 18 creditors, that is giving me comfort on 69% of the total population. So that's a very good comfort by testing only 18 balances out of 4,200. So these 18 anyways I will have to test. And about the rest 31%, which is about 4,182 balances, from there I will pick a few samples. If we use MUS, say in this case we have picked 25 items. 25 is the sample size which has been determined. So 25 samples we will pick from out of these 4,182 balances. And these 25 items plus 18 items which surpasses the threshold, a total of 43 samples we will be testing for getting a comfort on creditor balances. So what it says, we have to test all high value items 100%. They carry most of the rupees and most of the risk. Sample the long tail because 31% balance captures 4,182 creditors. So we have a long tail. So from the long tail, we will just do sampling. We will not test that 100% definitely. And MUS gives larger items a higher chance because MUS is such a method which will give larger items higher chance of getting picked up. So those items will be picked up out of those 25 samples. And coverage here, what we have done, 511 lakhs of 742 lakhs, that is close to 69% by value before sampling the rest. So this particular methodology which we have followed for picking up samples, for determining the sample size, is efficient also and it is defensible also. So this is something which is called a practical testing method. Okay, now after we have tested, we will evaluate and project sample results. So this slide again is very important slide. So please understand it, please focus on it really well. The first one is investigate every exception. See what happens. We are testing samples only, and we have to take those samples really seriously, because out of a total population of 4,200 items, we are just testing 43 samples, and we are relying only on those samples for the whole population. So if we are not putting in sufficient effort to test that sample, we will not investigate it in detail, then that does mean that we expose ourselves to unwarranted risks. So every item has to be tested in the right spirit. Every sample has to be tested in the right spirit. And if any exceptions are identified, those have to be investigated in detail, because those are just the representative samples of the whole population. So we need to take those samples really seriously and very seriously, and we have to document the procedures which we have done on those samples in detail, so that we can demonstrate it if required. So the first point is we have to investigate every exception. Is it an error or a one-off anomaly? We need to understand its cause. We have to understand its root cause, why it has happened. Was it a control failure, or it was just a person dependent failure, or is it a process dependent failure? So that we need to understand. We need to project to the population. So what happens, say out of 43 samples which we tested, we see that 40 samples are okay, there are no issues. But in 3 samples, which we could identify certain misstatements. So what does this indicate? Should we restrict our misstatement only to those 3 items? No, we cannot, because those are only samples. We will have to extrapolate those misstatements to the overall population, and then we have to consider it as an uncorrected misstatement if at all the management does not agree to correct it. So those misstatements we will have to project to the overall population, and that we will have to consider as misstatement when we aggregate it for comparison with overall materiality. Then third is compare with tolerable misstatement. So whatever projected number we have got by extrapolating the misstatement to the overall population, plus the errors which are already known to us, we will club these two together, and then we will compare that with the tolerable threshold which we have fixed. If it exceeds the projected plus known errors, exceeds the tolerable amount, then there is an issue. Then we will have to assess whether there is any modification is required to our audit report or not. And if it is within that tolerable limit, then there is no issue, we can go ahead with it. And at last, when we will prepare a statement of uncorrected misstatements, there we can consider these misstatements to see if it exceeds the materiality figure or not. Consider qualitative factors, fraud indicators, pattern, control implications, then conclude. So just doing the sampling, identifying the misstatements, projecting the misstatement may not be sufficient. We also need to see whether there are any fraud indicators or not. Is there any pattern of errors? Are there any control implications which I need to consider in my RC report? So all these needs to be seen before we conclude on whether any misstatement is there or not, and whether this particular item has to be reported to TCWG or not, or whether this item needs a place in my audit report or not. Now coming to external confirmations, SA 505. There are 2 types of confirmations which we can obtain. One is positive confirmation and the other is negative confirmation. In case of positive confirmation, what we do, we ask the party to reply if they agree to the balance or if they do not agree to the balance. So even though they agree to the balance, still they will have to respond. So that is positive confirmation. And negative confirmation is the one where they have to reply only if they disagree to the confirmation I am seeking from them. Say, for example, we have sent a confirmation request to a debtor. We have seen that in our books, the amount is reflecting at 1 crore, which is due from the debtor. So, in our confirmation request, we have put an amount of 1 crore that please confirm whether this much is due from you or not. So either we can ask a positive confirmation from them, or we can ask a negative confirmation. If we ask a positive confirmation, say they agree to that 1 crore figure, they will respond to it that yes, we agree to it. In our books also the figure is 1 crore. But in case of negative confirmation, they will not reply to it because their figure matches with the figure which is there in the confirmation request. So here what will happen? Here what will happen that he will respond only to that when there is any clear-cut disagreement. If there is no disagreement, then say for example, that debtor may say that okay, this 1 crore balance is okay, this is the balance in my books, but we are in talks with your client for issuance of certain credit notes to us on account of quality issues or quantity issues, whatever. That is still in talks. So the amount that may be subjected in that case will be around 20 lakhs. So that gives us an additional information which we will not get when it is negative confirmation, which we may not get. So it is ideally advised that generally we should send confirmation requests as positive confirmations, which would provide stronger evidence to us as compared to the negative confirmations. But one thing we need to keep in mind here, that the most important aspect in case of external confirmation is having our own control on the external confirmation process. We cannot ask the client to get those confirmations to us. Through them, we should not get those confirmations. We should directly obtain the confirmations from the parties. That gives us added comfort. Now, non-responses, exceptions, and refusal. Yes.
I have sent one query in your chat box. Please check.
Yes, I'll check. 1 minute. Yeah. Sir, when we are auditing, suppose we picked the wrong set of sample due to the complexity of the entity and did all the testing. Okay, so when we are auditing, suppose we picked the wrong set of sample due to the complexity of the entity and did all the testing. See, this may happen. Generally, we pick up samples to make them with an anticipation that those will be representative samples. And there may be cases where we can go wrong on it. We pick up unusual items and usual items we do not pick up, or the samples which we pick up, those are not representative samples. If that is the case, in course of the audit, if we come across any such situation where we see that the sampling which we have done is not appropriate, then we have to again pick up samples using a new way or the appropriate way, again pick up samples, again test those to get comfort on that. So we will have to extend our audit procedures based on the issue which we have noted. So that is the only way out through which we can safeguard us. And if at all there is a significant complexity which is involved, so definitely we have a para in our audit report called CAM, Key Audit Matter. So there we can capture it, that the significant complexity was there due to these factors, and this is the approach which we have followed to address that issue. So CAM can be used for that purpose, but it does not safeguard us from the fact that our our sample picking procedure itself was wrong, if at all. If at all that's the situation, then we need to ensure by extending our sample set. Okay, coming back to the presentation. Okay, non-responses. So if at all, say for example, we have sent external confirmation request and we did not get any responses. So for that, we have to perform alternative procedures. We have to perform alternative procedures. What do we mean by alternative procedures? We will do subsequent payments receipt testing. If a debtor is reflecting there in financial statements, subsequently, definitely the money must have been collected from him. So if we refer to the subsequent receipts, then through that we will ensure that okay, this debtor was actually existing against which money has been received, and same goes with the creditor also. So this is called subsequent testing. So even though responses have not been received, we will have to perform alternative procedures. Just that we have sent the confirmation request and we did not receive the confirmations, and we say that we have done our job, that is not done actually. Job is not done yet. We will have to perform those alternative procedures for non-responses too. Reply with a difference. So wherever we receive confirmation and we see that there are differences between the figure which is reflecting in the books and the confirmation which we have received from the party. If any differences are there, we will flag those differences to the client and ask them to provide us the reconciliation for the same, why these differences are reflecting. And we will get into the nature of each of the reconciling item to see no unusual items are there which shouldn't be there. Then management refuses to allow confirmation. So there may be a case where management is asking us not to send confirmation request to these parties. So we need to understand the reason why they are asking us so. If we find their reason unreasonable, we are not convinced with their reason, then definitely it may tantamount to scope limitation. And if there is a scope limitation, we will have to see whether we have to modify our opinion in that respect, or we need to withdraw from the engagement. If there is a scope limitation which is significant enough for me to take that decision. Then reply via unreliable channel. So basically, if any replies we have received not directly from the party, if it has come through some other source, maybe through client or any other source, then we need to see whether the source through which it has been received, whether that source is authentic or not. So that there we will have to use our professional judgment, and if required, we will directly follow up with the party that whether you have sent this confirmation or not, that confirmation we will obtain from them. Confirming debtors versus creditors. So there is, what is the difference between the two? So in case of debtors, confirmation is well suited. It directly tests the existence of receivable, whether it is real or not. If we do not receive replies, as discussed, we will test the subsequent receipts. But in case of creditors, where we are testing it for the assertion of completeness, confirmation alone may not be sufficient, because confirmation will be reflecting only the closing balance. But there may be certain transactions which have been left out, which have been omitted, right? So in those cases, supplier statement reconciliation plays a significant role. So confirmation along with supplier statement reconciliation, both are required for the purpose of creditors, and we will also do tracing exercise for searching the unrecorded liabilities. So this is the additional procedure which we need to do for liabilities, and especially in creditors we have to do this. So same tool is being used but in different ways in asset side and on liability side. Cutoff testing, which we have discussed in the last session also, that last 5 GRNs before the year end and first 5 GRNs after the year end, we will pick and we will see that which period it relates to and whether the transaction has been recorded in that period or not. So that is referred to as cutoff testing. Then search for unrecorded liabilities. How can we search that? The first way to search the unrecorded liabilities is post year end payments. We will review the bank statements after the year end and we will see that whether any such payments are reflecting there against which liability was not there in this year. Since that payment relates to this year only, but no liability was booked against that. So that will give us some indication. Second is unmatched GRNs. So the cutoff testing which we talked about just now, first five, we will see if any non-matched GRNs are there which should have been recognized here but not recorded, and vice versa. Pending or held invoices, if any, we will examine the invoice register also to see, and we will also see are there any goods in transit where risk and reward has been transferred to us. So liability in that respect also needs to be recorded, which has actually been recorded or not. So that needs to be seen, and that can be done through looking into goods in transit, and if any disputes are there, even those needs to be considered for the purpose. Then subsequent purchase invoices, we have to see the invoices received after year end. If those invoices refer to the period of this current year, then definitely those invoices relate to the current year. Why no provision was created against those invoices in the current year? That will be the question. Subsequent events, this we discussed. Subsequent receipt and subsequent payments, this we have already discussed. From tools to a substantive audit program. So here if you see each item, say for example we are testing trade payables, so for which all assertion we are testing it, that has to be documented that way. Like in this case, the first assertion is completeness, risk has been identified as high. The procedure which we have followed here for determining the nature, timing and extent, that we have to search for unrecorded liabilities and we need to review the supplier reconciliations. So the assertion of completeness in case of trade payables is being addressed by searching the unrecorded liabilities through tracing mechanism and by reviewing the supplier reconciliations. Second is existence. Here the risk has been considered as moderate. Here what we have decided to confirm the top 18 creditors. So the 18 creditors which were exceeding the threshold of 32.5 lakhs, we are seeking confirmation from all those creditors. And for non-replies, we are planning to do the alternative testing, that is subsequent payment testing. Then cutoff has been identified as an assertion which may have an impact on this ledger balance. So here also the risk has been identified as moderate based on the auditor's assessment. So here what we have decided that we will test 5 GRNs each side prior to year end and after the year end. So through this procedure, we are addressing this assertion. And the last is valuation. The risk has been considered as low. Here what we have decided to do, we will recompute the forex amounts and discounts on sample basis. The samples which we have picked, there we will see whether forex has been accounted for appropriately or not, and whether discounts have been captured appropriately or not. So this is the way through which each assertion is addressed through a procedure, and that has to be documented in the working papers. So when we discuss the next day session, in the next day session, we will discuss the procure to pay process. One full set of process we will discuss. There we will see how this program is prepared in detail. So whatever discussed today we have discussed, So here, what are the common mistakes which we make? The first mistake is we test in the wrong direction, where tracing was required for assessing, for checking the completeness. There we are using vouching and vice versa. Analytical review, that can't disagree. So we have expectation, we have built the expectation, but we have used the amount, the subject amount itself in building the expectation. So that is meaningless. Then sampling with no objective. So we are picking samples without identifying the assertion which we are trying to address. So identification of assertion, stating the assertion is very important, and even fixing the tolerable misstatement level is again very important. Treating a confirmation as conclusive. So if we have received a confirmation, we cannot consider it as conclusive. It may not be complete because it is just reflecting the closing balance. And maybe there are certain liabilities which have been omitted from it. So we need to see, we need to follow up if at all required from the party. If any additional liability is there, you please confirm to us, or other procedures we will have to follow. Then ignoring exceptions. So when we do test of details and all, or when we arrive at difference, when we do analytical procedures, so we cannot ignore any exceptions, because especially in case of test of details, we have used only the representative samples. So if at all any exception is there, we have to get into the root cause of it to identify what is the reason. So now whatever we have discussed today, now whatever is required as part of substantive procedures, whatever tools are available, what is there in essays, all those tools we have discussed. And in the next day, what we will do, we will build a file based on the learnings of first session of substantive procedures and today's learning as well. So please be prepared for the next session. Please go through whatever we have discussed till now, and let's solve. Now we have 2-3 minutes left, so let us quickly get these FAQs done. The first one is, when can analytical procedures alone be enough? So analytical procedures can be enough only in cases where their risk is, the area has been identified as a low risk area, and it is having, the items are having predictable relationship in that item. So in that case, in that ledger, then in that case we can use analytical procedures. Take an example of rent. Their analytical procedure may be sufficient unless and until it has been identified as a significant risk. If it is a significant risk, then TOD is compulsory. Only analytical procedure may not suffice. Next one is, does a bigger population means bigger sample? So bigger population has a little role in sampling. It has got a little role. Major role is with respect to risk of material misstatement, what is the degree of risk, and secondly, what is the tolerance misstatement level which we have fixed. So barely sample size is driven by risk, tolerable and expected misstatement, population size has little effect. Why prefer supplier reconciliations over confirmation for creditors? Because the key risk is completeness in case of liabilities. So that is the reason we prefer supplier reconciliations instead of just confirmations. This we discussed. Now last 3 questions. The first one is, a confirmation came back unanswered. So definitely we will have to do alternative procedures. We'll have to do the subsequent testing as we discussed. What is the most important test for payables completeness? The most important test is to see the post year-end payments, unmatched GRNs, and subsequent invoice booking. So these 3 are the most important tests which we can use to address the assertion of completeness. Then found one exception in a sample is that material. So we will have to take exceptions very seriously, because we are testing only the representative samples. We are not testing all the samples. So every exception has to be looked into in detail. It has to be root cause analysis has to be done for each those exceptions to understand the reason of it and to extrapolate it to overall population. So that's it from day 2. Now, if you have any queries, I will definitely respond to it, else I am done from my end. Any questions from anyone? So we have been able to complete it by 6 today. Any questions?
Yes, Tanya, are there questions? Are there queries? Tanya? Tanya, are you there? I think, sir, no queries are there because
Okay.
otherwise Tanya madam would have responded.
Okay. No problem.
Yes, sir.
So that's it from my side, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you, sir.
considering me for this session. And hopefully, people must have got some good insights through today's session.
Ji, sir.
Yeah.
Great, sir. Very wonderful session, students. आप मैं क्या कहूंगा आपको कि ये सर जो 2 आवर्स में आपको कराते हैं, इसको 2 आवर्स ना समझना कभी भी, बिकॉज ये इतने डीप सारी बातें हैं, इतने डीप कंसेप्ट्स हैं, आप इन पे कम से कम भी 2 आवर्स को समझने के लिए आप 4 आवर्स डिवोट करो धीरे धीरे। मैं हमेशा यही कहता हूं कि आप स्लो चलो। बीइंग ए स्टूडेंट एक बहुत बड़ा रूल है। आप मेंबर्स अभी नहीं बने, मेंबर नहीं हो इंस्टीट्यूट के, अभी आप जो स्टूडेंट, चाहे वो इंटरमीडिएट स्टूडेंट है चाहे वो फाइनल स्टूडेंट है, आप स्लो, हमेशा जितना आप स्लो करोगे स्टडी को उतना आपको ज्यादा बेनिफिट होगा, उतना आपका डाइजेशन फास्ट होगा। स्टडी का सिंपल रूल है, गोल्डन रूल है, ऑलवेज स्टडी स्लो। जितना आप स्लो चलोगे, मैं बार बार स्टूडेंट्स को ये रिक्वेस्ट, चाहे एलवीसी हो चाहे एलवीआरसी हो, सर हम एलवीसी भी करते हैं सर, एलवीआरसी भी करते हैं, लाइव वर्चुअल क्लासेस भी हम कर रहे हैं सर स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, और फिर रिविजनरी क्लासेस भी कर रहे हैं।
ओके, वंडरफुल।
तो यस सर, तो मैं स्टूडेंट्स को यही बार बार रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ कि आप स्लो करो, क्योंकि जितना हम स्लो करते हैं स्टडीज के साथ, जल्दी नहीं करते, उतना हमारा डाइजेशन फास्ट होता है। अब स्टूडेंट क्या करता है, मुझे अभी स्टूडेंट का फोन आया, अभी मे बी आज दोपहर में फोन आया, वो स्टूडेंट कह रही है कि मैंने तो ना सारे लेक्चर्स अटेंड कर लिए, इसलिए मैं अब सितंबर में एग्जाम दे दूं, आता कुछ है नहीं, यही नहीं पता इनकम टैक्स में कि हेड्स कितने हैं। मैं कहा चल तू मुझे ये बता दे कितने हेड्स हैं, वही नहीं पता। इनकम टैक्स में जीएसटी में सप्लाई बता दे, वो नहीं पता। तो मैं कहा यार, अगर हम 6th 7th 8th 9th क्लासेस भी करते हैं ना, तो उनमें भी 1-1 साल लगता है। और स्टूडेंट सर यहाँ 2 महीने में, बिलीव मी, मेरे पास डेली कॉल्स हैं, डेली क्वेरीज हैं। स्टूडेंट 2 महीने के अंदर ग्रुप निकालना चाहता है इंटरमीडिएट का, चाहे अब सर इतना हरी मेरे को समझ नहीं, मैं ये माइंड सेट नहीं समझ पाया सर आज दिन तक स्टूडेंट्स का, कि यहाँ पे सीए में आके बहुत हरी करने लग जाते हैं कि हमारा 3 महीने में तो बहुत ग्रुप ही क्लियर हो जाए। ये माइंड सेट है सर, बिलीव मी। मैं कहता 3 महीने में, मुझे इंटरमीडिएट लेवल पे मैं कहता हूँ अगर इनकम टैक्स भी खाली 50 नंबर का जो पेपर है वो भी आपका तैयार हो जाए, तो मैं गारंटी देता हूँ नहीं कर सकते आप। अब खाली लेक्चर सुनने से थोड़ा ना हो जाएगा सर, उस पर आप इम्प्लीमेंट करो। मैं कहता हूँ इम्प्लीमेंटेशन बहुत बड़ा टास्क होता है। फिर आप उसे इम्प्लीमेंट, उसे थॉट दो, एक उसे विचार करो कि सर ने क्या बोला है, रोशन बजाज जी ने आपको क्या सिखाया है, ये आप उसको थॉट दो, उसको सोचो कि ये बातें प्रैक्टिकली कैसे इम्प्लीमेंट होती होंगी, उस पर आप इमेजिनेशन करो, उनको रिवाइज करो, उन चीजों को, उसको थ्योरी से मैच करो, एसेज से मैच करो। तो स्टूडेंट्स ये सारी बातें हैं जो आप इनको इम्प्लीमेंट करा करो। मैं बार बार एक ही बात कहता हूँ स्टूडेंट्स को कि आप इम्प्लीमेंटेशन से बात बनेगी, खाली सुनने से नहीं बात बनेगी। तो आप जो हमारे स्टडी मॉड्यूल्स है बहुत अच्छे लिखे हुए हैं, आप एक बार उनको खोला करो और अंदर स्टडी किया करो। डीप स्टडीज है, स्टोरीज आगे लिखी हुई है हर चैप्टर के अंदर, और सर ने जो आपको बातें सिखाई हैं वो बहुत ही जबरदस्त और बहुत ही डीप है, और सारी करंट जो सीनियर्स हैं, ऑडिट सीनियर्स हैं, उनमें सारी रेलेवेंट है अकाउंटिंग सीनियर्स में। तो आप देखोगे, आप उनको स्टडी से मैच करो, एसेस से मैच करो, आपका रिजल्ट बहुत अच्छा आने वाला है। तो मैं आपको एक, और कोई भी आपको अगर कोई भी डाउट हो, कभी प्रेपरेशन के अंदर कैसे भी कोई भी डाउट हो, मैं हमेशा अपना मोबाइल नंबर शेयर करता हूँ, आप मुझे कॉल किया करो 9466789298। तो मैं हमेशा हर स्टूडेंट के पास, जो भी एलवीसी में, एलवीआरसी में, जो भी ऑडिट इनसाइट्स में, हमेशा शेयर करता हूँ स्टूडेंट्स, आप कॉल किया करो। कोई आपको तैयारी की कोई स्ट्रेटजी नहीं समझ आ रही, कुछ नहीं हो रहा, आप मुझे कॉल करो। मैं हमेशा स्टूडेंट्स की कॉल को, व्हाट्सएप मैसेज जरूर मेरे से मिस हो जाते हैं, लेकिन मैं स्टूडेंट्स की कॉल जरूर कॉल बैक करता हूँ, या फिर कॉल में आपको आंसर हमेशा करता हूँ। तो सर ये सारे प्रोग्राम्स हैं जो हम स्टूडेंट्स के लिए कर रहे हैं।
बस इसमें एक ही चीज ऐड करना चाहूंगा सर, जो
जी
आपने
सर,
जितनी
यू
बातें
आर
बोली
वेलकम सर। जी सर।
बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट बातें हैं और वो स्टूडेंट्स को डेफिनेटली ध्यान रखनी चाहिए। बट
जी सर।
वन थिंग ओनली आई वुड लाइक टू ऐड कि सिर्फ एग्जाम पास करना शुड नॉट बी द पर्पस। अभी एग्जाम पास करना डेफिनेटली दैट इज एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट, बट जब हम लोग पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं तो आई एम टेलिंग यू, जितना कुछ अभी हम लोग आज भी हमने डिस्कस किया आपके कोर्स मटेरियल में भी दिया हुआ है, वही चीज आगे भी हमको प्रैक्टिकली अप्लाई करना है। तो जो भी पढ़ाई भी कर रहे हो उसको समझ करके पढ़ाई कीजिए, रट्टाफिकेशन मत कीजिए प्लीज। हो सकता है रट्टाफिकेशन करके आप एग्जाम कोई पास कर भी जाए, बट दैट विल नॉट सर्व द पर्पस। आप एक
ग्रेट सर,
अच्छे
ग्रेट।
चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट नहीं बन पाओगे।
ग्रेट सर, ग्रेट। तो सर ने देखो कितनी बड़ी आपको इम्पोर्टेंट बात बताई है कि आप उसे ये प्रैक्टिकल एंगल कि आपको ऐसे पढ़ाई करनी है कि उसे हमें प्रैक्टिकली इम्प्लीमेंट जब करना पड़ेगा, जब हमें उसे प्रैक्टिकल वर्ल्ड में हम जाएंगे तो उसको हमें इम्प्लीमेंटेशन भी करना आना चाहिए। तो ये सारी बातें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात है सर। वेरी गुड सर, आपने बहुत अच्छा टिप दिया स्टूडेंट्स को। और ये सारी बातें जो है इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की तरफ ही अल्टीमेटली जाती हैं। तो आप अगर स्लो स्टडी करोगे तो ये सारे एंगल्स जो सर जैसे बोल रहे हैं तो आप उसको समझ पाओगे, डाइजेस्ट कर पाओगे, फिर उसे आप रिकॉल भी कर पाओगे और प्रैक्टिकली इम्प्लीमेंटेशन भी कर पाओगे। तो द मेन थिंग इज आपको स्लो चलना है और प्रैक्टिकल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन साथ में देख के चलना है। दैट्स द आइडिया। सर आप और कुछ सर टिप देना चाहेंगे सर स्टूडेंट्स को?
दैट्स इट सर, बस वही है, जो भी पढ़ाई करो समझ के करो, उतना ही काफी है।
ग्रेट सर, ग्रेट। थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू सो मच
ओके,
सर।
थैंक यू वेरी मच सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
ग्रेट सर,
थैंक यू।
थैंक यू स्टूडेंट्स। और आप अपने स्टूडेंट्स, आप अपने फ्रेंड्स को मैं बार बार कहता हूँ, आप उनको इन्फॉर्म करो कि इतने इंपॉर्टेंट सेशंस चल रहे हैं, प्लस एलवीसी एलवीआरसी, अपने जितने फ्रेंड्स को आप बता पाओ तो उनका भी साथ में भला होगा, वो भी गेन करेंगे इससे। थैंक
हमारे
यू
टाइम में ऐसा
स्टूडेंट्स,
कोई
थैंक यू।
इनिशिएटिव नहीं था सर।
हाँ जी,
हमारे टाइम में ऐसे कोई भी इनिशिएटिव नहीं थे, नहीं तो
एग्जैक्टली
बेटर
एग्जैक्टली
चार्टर्ड
सर,
अकाउंटेंट्स।
एग्जैक्टली सर। अभी तो सर हम स्टूडेंट्स को बहुत सारी फैसिलिटी दे रहे हैं जो हम लोग
हाँ,
उस
वो तो
समय
हमारे
नहीं,
टाइम में
हम लोगों के टाइम में सिर्फ
वो
स्टडी
अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं
मॉड्यूल
था
ही
हमारे
होते
पास।
थे,
करेक्ट
स्टडी
करेक्ट।
मॉड्यूल होते थे और हम वही पढ़ के पास होते थे, तो खुद से ही
तो
सारा करते थे।
डेफिनेटली वी एक्सपेक्ट कि हमसे बेटर चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट से लोग सारे बनेंगे।
बिल्कुल
दैट वी
सर, बिल्कुल
डेफिनेटली
बिल्कुल
एक्सपेक्ट।
बिल्कुल सर। तो इसलिए स्टूडेंट्स मैं आपको कह रहा हूँ, जब इतने सारे इनिशिएटिव्स इंस्टीट्यूट आपके लिए बोर्ड ऑफ स्टडीज ले रहा है, तो आप और स्टूडेंट्स को भी लेट द अदर स्टूडेंट्स आल्सो टेक द बेनिफिट। तो आप एटलीस्ट इन्फॉर्म, आपके, मेरे को मालूम है स्टूडेंट्स के ग्रुप्स बने हुए हैं आपस में, तो आप ग्रुप्स में मैसेज डालो, उनको इन्फॉर्म करो अपने दोस्तों को, ताकि और स्टूडेंट्स भी इसका बेनिफिट उठाएं। थैंक यू स्टूडेंट्स,
ओके,
थैंक यू सर,
थैंक
थैंक यू
यू।
वेरी मच सर। यस यस, थैंक यू, थैंक यू।